number items as well.
Mr. Bederow.
Thank you, Judge.
Honestly, go fuck yourself, sir. You don't say that, okay? You don't lose a trial where a jury acquits someone and finds overwhelmingly not guilty and say, I gave my sincere obligation to look into this, and I'm telling you all I saw when she's guilty. Again, respectfully, go fuck yourself.
Swear again like that. That was, no, I mean, whatever. That was, I shouldn't have done that.
A few moments later.
You, as a prosecutor, have got to be out of your fucking mind.
Nose.
Dude, Jimmy, look at those ears.
The ears don't bother me as much.
No, I don't trust a man. I don't trust a man with a lobe like that. No,
really,
not a fucking chance.
The mouth is butthole to me.
Very thin, paper thin.
The nose.
Oh, the nose.
The brows.
Well, listen, I will tell you though, I kind of like a fucked up nose on a guy.
I like a big old honker. I like a big nose.
Old nose. Give me that big bitch. You know,
yeah,
like, I'm into it.
Come over here, cluck cluck.
Yeah.
I see some chickens that went moving on up in my biz, cluck cluck, running. You gotta be with the kids, the kids, the kids, the kids, the kids, kids.
And I go, oop, clutch, clench, kegel. We did it all. And I go, oh, and what happened? And they go, well, we just got 4,000 plus pages, bitch. And I said, stop it. Show me it. Take me to Unimpound Town immediately, if not sooner. So what happens?
The bitch is here.
Why are you at a football game? Are you a Fonz correspondent?
Well, no, because it's only for men over 30. Okay? Have a great night, boys. Fuck off.
It's been 1 week since you looked at me.
Hey, Blues Clues, motherfucker.
Good morning, lovies. Today is Saturday. It is January 10th, 2026. And we are gathered today for a special Saturday service with the one and only emotional support attorney, Mr. Mark Bederow. Our schedules have changed. Our realness, it has not. Okay, new year, new us. And today we are discussing some hot topic items that have come down the pike this week. So I just want everybody to hold on tight, and know that, like, remember who we are, and that you know more when we have legal breakdowns, right? So instead of an emotional place, we're going to come from a logical place. And we always do that with the help of the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Bederow. Good morning, Mr. Bederow.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you today?
Okay. Heavily caffeinated.
Heavily caffeinated this morning. I also did want to recommend to everybody, take some Zicam, okay? Non-sponsored. But I'm telling you, they say that they're here to, like, shorten a cold, but I say it prevents a cold, okay? Does it? I don't know. But there's something with the vitamin C. There is something happening emotionally. And the rapid melt, I love it, okay? I want this and a nasal spray. If you can hit yourself with a nasal spray, we don't want sickness. And also the flu is out of control in over 45 states, just saying. So stay healthy, everyone. Blow your nose. Make sure that you have some vitamin C, and let's get going. First and foremost, Boston Bruins, obsessed with your hoodie. You are that king. What are you feeling Bruins-wise?
They're not good. Mediocre. Okay. Trending bad rather than mediocre trending good. But, you know, so you hope they do well. You hope they make the playoffs. I don't think they will. I don't think they're very good. They haven't been for a couple of years. Yeah. So, you know, whatever. It's we're much more concerned here with the Patriots and Celtics, and the Bruins are just kind of in the background, where they'll probably be on the sports scene around where you are for the next few years. They're clearly, of the four major teams, the farthest away from being competitive or compelling.
Totally. I
The
totally
best thing I can say about the Bruins is they do have my daughter's all-time favorite athlete, Charlie McAvoy, because she did get to meet him at a Patriots game, and he gave her a signed football. I picked her specifically. She became obsessed with him, got a Bruins jersey. We went to a Bruins game a year later. She got a puck over the boards after the warm up, and we were down low, and the players skate around, and he came up and took a picture with her. Which so no matter how bad the Bruins are, we have a lot of love in this house for Charlie McAvoy. Did I lose you? What are we doing here?
Lovies. Am I here? Jesus Christ. Oh, what just happened? Oh, she's technically blacked out. Okay. Mr. Bederow, we're here. What?
Did I regale you with my Charlie McAvoy stories and just stun you into silence? Jesus. Anyway.
I blacked out, literally. Sorry, guys. Don't worry. I physically blacked out, had to reboot, and it said something about StreamYard. My bad. Thank you to the 860 people that stayed with us for that. Okay. All right. So now, never mind. We're back. We got the McElroy. We love him. He's a good doobie. You're in a winter white. I love that about you. And now, all right. Now go into Patriots tomorrow night. Big doings. What are you thinking?
They're going to win, I think. The Chargers, they're good, but they're not great. Patriots getting healthier. They're home, although for them, I'm not sure that's a good thing. They have to win, in order to take the next step to being dominant again. In the beginning of the season, you would have said, have a winning season. Then you might have said, just make the playoffs, win the division. You have to raise the expectations given how good they've become. And also the knock is that all they do is play cupcakes every week. So there's not really many cupcakes in the playoffs. So they have to win. But, the Chargers flying east, they get kind of a gift playing Sunday night. The Chargers do, rather than say 1:00 on a Sunday or even a Saturday game, because flying east is much harder. And if you look historically, West Coast teams who fly east to play in the early window have a shockingly low win rate, which I'm sure is jet lag and all of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a night game. Initially, I was going to go with my son.
Mm-hmm.
Then some real life things came up that not good things, which I don't want to get into, which have to keep me home. So in any event, no, I'll be on TV like most of you, or watching TV like most of you.
And you on TV like most of us. Ooh, I wish.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, before we get going into our other topic is tonight, I did want to mention is the Lifetime Karen Reed film. Okay. Now, this has me all the way tickled. Okay. Because I have not seen, well, in my opinion, the HBO docu-series or documentary was like not, those sound bites were used by Hank Brennan. It was portrayed in a negative sense in certain areas for Karen. But this, even in the description, is something that is very interesting. I have not seen almost a movie or any kind of dramatic telling that is putting Karen in a favorable light. And in this, it's almost seeming that she's the heroine of the story, which is a factually innocent woman would be. But the verbiage and the specific adjectives that were used in this, I was like, wow, okay, I'm more interested to see it now. Are you going to watch it at all or no?
I don't know. I mean, not tonight. Full disclosure, my interest in a Lifetime,
television for women? What?
True crime, but not really true crime. Fictionalization based on something real is not high, to be honest with you. I'm not that interested. I'll be watching the Bears-Packers game tonight instead, probably watching after that. I'm up to season 4 of Mad Men. I'm sure I'll watch a few of those episodes. I mean, at some point, if there's something important that comes from whatever Lifetime has, I'm sure we'll all hear about it. I'm sure people will go online. Some people will yell that it was great. Others will yell that it's not great. And at the end of the day, it's just people yelling, and who cares?
And who cares?
So I just, I don't even know who's in this. Whatever. I mean, I've seen nothing. I mean, I'm aware of it. I haven't. Somebody said, "Did you see the trailer?" I have not. I hope it just is more accurate and portrays Karen in a more positive light than, as it turned out, some of the previous shows did. But again, this is not even real. I mean, if it's Lifetime, it's not a documentary, it's fiction. So,
Yeah.
I mean, long and short of it is, I don't really care.
Yeah, you don't care. And obviously, yeah, we shouldn't really care because it's not based in fact. It's only based on events, clearly. But I don't know. I was just, I was excited for Karen to see that it was a different kind of feel to it, or it appears it's going to have her in a more favorable light. So that was just something that I found interesting. And also, I always, with the casting choices, whoever they casted as Aiden and as Turtle Boy in it, I guess was like a hot topic too, because he looked like it was it did not even resemble Aiden at all. So, you know, I just want to
I mean,
of course.
Again, it's Lifetime. I mean, they get people oftentimes they can eliminate certain characters. You know, 3 people become one for the purpose of moving a story along in movies and whatnot. I don't know. To me, all of this is just oversaturation, and in the grand scheme, it's just not that important or that interesting. But that's just my view. If people like it, I hope it's favorable for Karen. But again, there'll be people, I'm sure, when does this air? You said tonight. I'm sure there'll be people tomorrow screaming how unfair it was, and there'll be people screaming how great it was. And, you know, the Twitter back and forth will go on, and everyone will be healthy. I mean, it's just not that important.
Noted. Absolutely. And yeah, that makes all the sense. Did you happen to catch, by any chance, any interviews of certain selectmen in Canton?
I'm aware of it. I have not seen it. I'm aware of, I guess, multiple times in which he spoke recently. When he was present, when some inappropriate things were said, which I don't want to get into. I'm aware that you know, he gave another interview to, you know, the same group of people who are advocating on behalf of members of the McCabe and Albert families. But, you know, at some point I'll watch it if there's anything noteworthy as it relates to a case that we're dealing with. But I have not seen it as of yet.
Yeah, I thought that just for me, Cliff's Notes version was that there was a admission that the person in the spaces was actually a family member of the McCabe's. Also, that Chris Albert stated he would not be seeking re-election for the select board, which was a 3-year term. It will be up in April of 26. And also, there was talk about like the dehumanization of what they believed was being called McAlberts. And for me, I was like, oh, because he said there are only the McCabe's and the Alberts. And that for me was the first time I had heard like a clear delineation between anyone with a last name McCabe or Albert, saying that like we're 2 separate entities and that they didn't want to be lumped in together. Is there a separation of church and state? Is there a reason behind that? Is there not? Was it just something that came off the cuff? But what I will say is that if you are interviewed at any point by 4 housewives, 1 from Indiana, maybe, just maybe, you don't talk about things that you've already testified to that may contradict what was said in trial when there is still ongoing civil cases. Thank you. That's my TED Talk, and that is what I will say. All right, so now into the meats and potatoes of everything. What? I need help. I need help. I need you to help me with a situation that I saw online. There is more information that continues to come out. Again, lovies, please, for the love of God, listen to the questions and how everything is answered this morning, because this is not to be triggering for anyone. I just want Mr. Bederow's opinion, and I trust his opinion. I trust his legal expertise. And this is the situation that happened in Minneapolis with the ICE agent and Renee Good, who who was shot and unfortunately unalived while she was driving a vehicle, and what happened. So she was in a rolling rally, or they were doing a rally. They were protesting the ICE, and there was a loss of life. So can you please kind of break down rather everything that occurred and what has come out? TMZ posted some additional footage last night from the officer's body cam, and it showed something different than I had seen initially on the news. So I just was really looking forward to hearing from you.
Well, yeah, fine. And I've made some statements on this, but before you even get into the actual, what is it all about? There are disclaimers, and people need to recognize just a couple of things. I'm talking about this not politically, not emotionally, but legally. And that apparently, if you have a legal opinion that does not align with your political views, that apparently triggers people and, makes me either a far right MAGA lunatic or a far left liberal whack job, depending on who it is. Lawyers look at this legally. And so that's how I'm looking at it purely. People have strong feelings about ICE. I get it. And these, what they call raids or whatnot, they have strong feelings about people protesting and their right to protest. And obviously a woman was killed here, shot in the face, apparently. So it's horrible all around. But, at some point, what I'm just talking about is what I think the law is and what the facts are and what people should wait for. I mean, I'm always going to say that let a process play out legally. Everyone is entitled to due process, even law enforcement officers who may be the targets or subjects of a criminal investigation. The other thing I'll tell you is, I have represented a federal FBI agent who was accused in state court of murder, and we attempted to remove it to federal court and got involved in the similar process that, may come into play here. And there are defenses that will come into play if anything ever happens with this by, the state of Minnesota, that will make it extraordinarily difficult for them to prosecute this guy in ultimately what would be federal court. There's no way around that. So,
Okay.
But the other thing is people, everyone has a right to their opinion, and certainly you see the videos and more information comes out, and that's fine. But what lawyers do is, again, analyze it in the context of the law.
Right.
And the relevant laws here are, the Minnesota self-defense statute, which they actually have a specific statute that relates to a police officer or law enforcement, a peace officer, their use of force and use of deadly force, which we can get into in a minute. People have to be familiar with what the federal removal statute is, because that will ultimately factor in. And they need to understand what federalism is and what the U.S. Constitution is and what federal law is here and Minnesota law is here. And that's no small thing. There is a potential defense under the Supremacy Clause, a federal officer immunity defense, which could, if charges were brought, completely knock this out altogether. So, we can talk about it at length and analyze it factually, but, people really should, if this is about, you're just a right-wing kook because you have an opinion that this is a complicated case, this is very complicated, okay? Shootings, allegations of excessive use of force or self-defense or justification, whatever you call it, these can be among the trickiest cases at all that you'll ever see, especially when you factor in the political and emotional component of it. And there's a dead woman. That's horrible.
Right.
It's terrible. But the way the law is set up, and this is not just in Minnesota, this is basically everywhere. There is a legal process where the analysis has to come when you're talking about self-defense from the perspective of the person who used the deadly force, which in this case would be the ICE agent. And so, you can say, what did Renee Good mean? Did she try to do this? Did she try to do that? And that's fair. But in a legal sense, really, you have to look at this through subjectively and objectively through the agent. That's how the law works. I mean, he has to have legitimately believed that there was an imminent threat of severe bodily harm or death coming to him. And in addition to that, you'd have to determine that an objective person in his circumstances, under the totality of everything going on, would find the same. If that's the case, and I haven't said that's the case when I'm getting dragged by all these people, I'm saying it's an issue. If that's the case, then there's no crime, because it would be a justifiable use of force, even if everyone agrees that this is horrible that a woman ended up as she did. And this goes beyond, should he have been standing here or there, or why did he do this or that? The bottom line is there's going to be a big problem for the state of Minnesota prosecuting when you have a federal officer acting in his official capacity, doing what he did and putting forth a defense that I had to use deadly force because I reasonably believed it was being used against me through a vehicle, which can constitute a weapon in these circumstances. And somebody is going to have to factually determine whether it was reasonable for him to believe that a car turning towards him could cause him serious bodily injury. Now, one of the things before we go any further that I just find ironic is, a lot of the people watching, they know who you are. They know who I am from Karen's case. And most of those people are very pro Karen, as they should be. I mean, I think she was unfairly prosecuted. And most importantly, she was subjected to a rush to judgment. Okay. There was no credible investigation. Everybody just jumped in, arrested her, and we all know what the police did and didn't do in that case. And I would just caution those people who saw fit in that case to criticize or rush to judgment not to do the same thing here based upon video you saw, which is very disturbing. Yes. Okay, it is horrifying to see, but again, the law is much more complicated than just, a woman lost her life and this guy fired the shot that resulted in that. That's all literally true.
Right.
There's just more analysis to be done. How much more video is there? I don't know. I mean, it's coming out day by day. There could be other video from other people. Witnesses need to be interviewed, okay? Including the ICE agents, including the civilians, including Renee Good's wife, including all the homeowners. It could be ring cameras. There could be any number of things. All I said was due process, don't rush to judgment, and let's see what happens. And I thought it was, and I think this thing has been handled atrociously by both sides of the political fence and the people in power. I think the people on behalf of the Justice Department have been very irresponsible. I think Trump has been out of line, offering a defense, if you will. I think Vance has been out of line, doing the same thing. I think Noam was way out of line in calling Miss Good a domestic terrorist without, again, any facts coming out, and using words like that is not productive. On the same token, having the mayor of Minneapolis, who was the mayor of the city, that city burned, by the way, 6 years ago, 5.5 years ago, saying instantaneously, this is a murder. That's not helpful either, okay? Having the mayor of New York City call this a murder, none of this is helpful. In years past, what politicians would do is express the seriousness of the situation, seek to calm, and urge people to let the process play out and trust the investigation. But in America in 2026, you can't trust the investigation for two reasons. you can't trust the Justice Department right now because they have already concluded that the man is innocent. I mean, so I understand that. The people who think that this was a horrible crime or a murder, the statements of Trump, Vance, and Noem are incredibly biased, and you get the feeling that the Justice Department is going to whitewash this. On the same token, when you look at the way the state of Minnesota has handled this in the past and the statements coming out of the Minnesota officials, you can't trust them, especially when it's a federal official. And even if they do go after him, which we really need to talk about legally, why this is going to end up in federal court anyway. But the problem is you can't trust any of these people. They're all out of line. They're all making irresponsible statements. And this is America in 2026. Again, you only have to go back 20 years or so. And what would public officials say? They would say, this is horrible. We need to get to the bottom of this. Let's let the investigators do their job, and if justice will be done, right?
Yeah.
The famous quote is, just let justice be done, though the heavens may fall. Just we'll get to the bottom of this. But nobody trusts anyone to do that anymore because everyone on both sides of the politics, every public official is making irresponsible statements, and they're taking a flamethrower to embers that are already burning and making this 100 times worse. None of them have any credibility, and this is a freaking disaster.
It is. And I do feel as though the rhetoric from all angles and all officials really does need to be toned down for the American people, for all of us, right? I think that for whatever reason, and God forgive me, but I've kind of been out of the political realm for many a year because of my own mental health and being like, oh gosh, everybody I feel has just spin doctors in whatever way they want. And I just am looking for like the truth of the matter, an investigation into the matter. And there is, at the end of the day, it's a loss of life that is never, like, no one looks at that and thinks, wow, wonderful. Like, no, you don't ever want to see that. However, legally speaking, was it lawful but awful? Is that where we go? And how does it go from state to a federal case? I want to just get all of your information or what you are able to see because of your past experience and all of your, expertise in this area as a defense attorney, and knowing, like you said, you represented an FBI agent for a murder before.
Well, a murder by state officials, which raises those kinds of issues. But, I've also handled, including at a trial level, numerous self-defense cases where the issues are basically the exact same. And, there are certain principles in New York, what we call justification, what people in English just call self-defense. And it also applies to law enforcement generally. The distinction isn't that different, but anyone who's claiming self-defense, any use of what is deadly force in order to be justified has to be in an imminent response to a reasonable perception of deadly force being used against you. Okay. So in other words, there has to be proportionality and it has to be in response. So if somebody basically flips you the bird, okay, you can't pull out a gun and shoot them and say that's self-defense. That's absurd. Okay.
Yes.
If somebody comes charging at you with a knife or points a gun at you, and you happen to have a loaded gun and are quicker and shoot to kill and do kill, well, that would, assume you didn't start it, which is a whole other thing we don't want to get into. But in this hypothetical, that would be using deadly force in response to a reasonable, belief that deadly force is about to be used against you. And again, what are we doing? We're talking about the perception from the person whose conduct you're scrutinizing. So the first red flag in all of this is there's all this discussion about, and the video it's horrifying to watch, especially the one where just seconds before this happens, where Renee says, we're good, or whatever she said, which did not appear, those words did not appear threatening. And people saying, well, her wheels were turning this way, so she didn't intend to do this. That may very well be true. And I don't think most serious people, by the way, believe that she intended to mow down and kill an ICE agent on the scene with her dog in the car in front of her wife and all these people, on the street. But again, in a legal sense, the analysis comes through the eyes of the agent and whether he perceived that deadly force was going to be used or was being used imminently against him. And deadly force does not just include conduct that would always cause death. It includes conduct that would cause serious bodily injury. Now, you, again, put aside her intent or what she's thinking. The critical issue is, what is this guy? And I'm not defending him. I'm just putting forth the issues and saying why this is a difficult analysis.
Yeah.
Never mind whether he should have been in front of the car or on the side of the car and what policy is and what best practices is. That's not the legal issue, okay? It's obvious he went by to look at the rear of the car based upon his cell phone video, to look at the license plate. And the wife made some comments about, we're not going to change the plates. And then he walks to the front, all that, or the side, the front, whatever you want to call it. That doesn't really matter. The point is, what was he perceiving in the seconds and milliseconds under a totality of the circumstances before he made a decision to discharge his firearm and unquestionably shoot to kill? Okay, there's no question. I mean, he blasted through the front windshield at head level from a couple of feet. Okay, some people say, well, why don't you shoot the tire? You don't shoot the tires. Okay, he's either authorized to shoot and use deadly force or he's not. Okay, it's no different legally, like when somebody breaks into your house committing a burglary and you happen to, in New York anyway, you can shoot to kill and you can aim right between the eyes or center mass. You don't have to fire a warning shot, okay? The law permits you to use deadly force when deadly force is being used against you. And there are sometimes duties to retreat, which are not really applicable here and not in your own home. That you've heard of the castle doctrine. That's what that's talking about. But the issue here is when a large SUV is coming towards you, okay, if you stand there and do nothing, could that cause serious bodily injury? I think without more, and there is much more, I get it, that simple question, if you're standing in front of a vehicle that comes at you, not at 50 miles an hour, but just barrels into you, could that cause serious bodily injury? I think the answer to that question is, it is reasonable to believe that could. Okay. Now, but again, under the totality of the circumstances, was all of this reasonable? And there are facts which would favor this agent, and there are facts that would not favor the agent. Okay. I mean, there, by his own cell phone, you do hear her say, hey, I forget what her exact words are. She doesn't appear intimidating, okay? But you can't, cut and paste that and say, see, she's not a threat. Again, that's not how lawyers look at this, including prosecutors and defense attorneys. Unfortunately, the fact of the matter is, after she said that, for whatever reason, the vehicle did come in the direction of this guy, okay? It is unfortunate that there are other statements that were made by the wife saying, drive. Did he perceive that? Did he perceive that she was ordered out of the vehicle? She didn't get out of the vehicle. Did they perceive that she was, somehow blocking traffic, kind of perpendicular? These are all the questions. And then if the car is coming at him, what does he do? He withdraws, discharges, and you have to ask yourself, was that a reasonable use of deadly force under a totality of the circumstances? The answer to that question is, I don't know without more. And I don't think you should necessarily draw a conclusion yet without hearing from all these other witnesses, more video, more evidence, whatever that may be. And simply what I've done is just point that out, that people, as a lawyer, people should look at it in the law. The law matters. Okay. This is not a Twitter dispute over whether ICE is bad or whether, the woman protesting should have gotten shot. Of course she should not have been shot. I mean, and many people are going to say, well, why was she protesting in the way she was? Of course she shouldn't have been doing that. Of course her wife should not have told her wife drive when, there's law enforcement doing that. This is a horrible situation all the way around. But, blasting people online for simply trying to say, these are the legal issues, it's a little complicated, maybe wait and see what's going to happen, give the benefit of the doubt from a due process standpoint to the guy who may or may not have a legal problem from this. And if you can still say, I don't like these ICE raids, this guy's not trained well, and this and that, that's all fine. But I mean, for me, I'm looking at it whether there's a crime here, and there are, this is a tough fact pattern with a horrible result at the end. Not every case of excessive force ends up with somebody on video being shot in the face from near point blank range while they're driving a car, at least in the general direction of this guy, and then seeing the car just listlessly bash into a car because the driver is obviously not alive. It's horrible, but it's just very unfortunate that the statements that have been made by all the politicians are just so out of whack on both sides. I mean, whether it's, again, domestic terrorism or a vigorous defense that this guy definitely, did this or had a right to do this, and there's no question, and then or other public officials calling this murder. None of this is productive.
Right. And that is not productive under our law, our system of law, and how this is going to end up being adjudicated in a court system. Like, I don't understand how this is, other than to flame the fires of, or rhetoric of, the bases of both bases. Like, just for me, it's like, this is an actual loss of life. Like, we have a loss of life here. We have failures in how this happened. Why? Because of the negative outcome, the catastrophic negative outcome. There is failure. Is the failure on the ICE agent, or is the failure on the inability to follow directions? Perhaps, I don't know, but it's horrifying. It shouldn't have happened. It sucked all around, in my opinion. And that's where the rubber meets the road for me. Mr. Bederow is seeing all of the fanning, right? Like, fanning the emotional part of it, because you never want to see that. It's a woman, it's a mother, it's the ICE has a terrible reputation. People are up in arms over that, as an agency at this time. And then the defense of them, or like the blanket defense of one way or another, is not how we should be looking at anything ever. And that's where I knew that your opinion or your legal breakdown of, like, okay, A plus B equals C in the court of law, not on what we have seen thus far. There is still more evidence and like video coming out all the time. 11 hours ago, there was the body cam footage of the ICE agent that came out on TMZ. And I was like, well, that's totally different than what I saw from the regular news earlier. I'm like, wait a second, because now
I'm not aware of any body camera footage. What I saw yesterday in the late afternoon, I believe, was the agent's cell phone. But if there's more beyond, I'm not even aware of that.
Hold on. Let me make sure I'm not.
Body worn camera has markings on it. Body worn camera has markings on it. It'll say Axon is usually the company. I mean, we see it in every case. It'll have a timestamp. If it's just video that appears to show from the agent's perspective, that's most likely his
That was just a cell phone then. Oh my.
And there is, as far as I can tell, there is some video footage of him filming on his cell phone, I believe.
Okay. Oh, it says point of view. My bad. Point of view of the agent. You're right. And that was, when was this? Yeah, that was yesterday afternoon. You're right. But in that footage, what I'm seeing is actually him being like actually struck by something.
Again, I think there are certain facts which I think you can deduce, which are not standing alone controversial if they're just literal statements of fact, as opposed to arguing circumstantially intent of what was perceived. It appears he was struck literally, in a literal sense, that there was contact between the vehicle and the agent. Now, whether that, again, he objectively interpreted when she was coming in his direction as her using deadly force, such that he had to use deadly physical force to terminate the threat, that's a factual question that has to be determined. I don't think that's fully resolved. There are some other things that are on his cell phone which are not great for him. And although it doesn't literally factor into what he perceived at the time, at the end of that video, that somebody, presumably him, I'm not sure though, somebody makes a disparaging comment, presumably about the woman who was shot, calling her an F and B. That's not a great look either, although there's a highly stressful set of circumstances, but that's out there. And that's something that certainly, if that was the agent who fired the shot and said that, and if he was talking about Renee Good, that's not helpful. It doesn't prove whether he perceived a threat, but these are things that are bad for him. But there's other things on that cell phone and other video that would make it very difficult for a prosecutor, such as, again, the wife saying drive, and she does immediately. Again, it's not a criticism of Renee Good. It's regrettable that the wife told her to do it and she did it. It's horrifying. But how does the officer perceive that with everything going on? The wife is encouraging her to drive. He's standing right there and she does, and he reacts in the way he does. All of this has to be sorted out. And there was a time in America, not today, when public officials would say, let's have this sorted out. And it was against the code for public officials to offer an opinion about the outcome of a case for fear of compromising an investigation or anything. But those days are long gone, obviously.
Absolutely. I have a question about ICE in general, Mr. Bederow. Can you like, for their training, is there a statistic that I thought I read from actually like our government's page that there is a high percentage of law enforcement as in ICE? So like they're able to, they've been trained, right? Their training is it of police officers, like regular standard police officers, or is it a different training, or is there a mixed bag? Like, do you have any comment or any understanding of that?
They're federal peace officers who have firearms training and are licensed to carry and are trained in apprehension and dealing with citizen encounters. Some would say in this case that training was not great, as evidenced. Again, I'm not getting into the
right.
The only political part of this that I would even say is the director of ICE in particular, without any real information, calling her a domestic terrorist, that's atrocious. That what that does to help any of this is just beyond comprehension, and that probably should lead to some serious evaluation as to whether, she may be fit for what she's doing as the figurehead of this agency. That is so inflammatory and so unhelpful, and just let this play out. But look, you already know the feds will never bring charges. And I'm not saying that charges are warranted or unwarranted, but they won't, because you have the president, the vice president, and the leader of this agency have all offered full-throated defense.
Oh,
That's they've said, the guy's a hero. Now you can agree or disagree, but they've said that. So how could there be any credible federal investigation at this point? But many other people don't think the state of Minnesota is capable of being fair on the other side of this. But the reality is the state of Minnesota is going to investigate this. And I would not be surprised at all if they attempt to bring some sort of charges against the agent. And then it's going to get even more of a hot potato, because then you're going to get into, again, the supremacy clause issues, the federal statutes, the federal removal, and all of those issues. And this will become, the reality is there's no good way out of this. There is going to be a large swath of the population, no matter what happens here, who will never be satisfied and will blame the other side, if you will, of being corrupt and unfair and stupid and renegade. And this is just the kind of stuff that tears the country apart.
yeah. And that's the scary thing. And I think of that for our kids and our grandkids and, generations to come, is that, like, I remember growing up, Mr. Bederow, that, like, there wasn't opinion news, right? Anchors. It was just the news. It was like how I remember it. You put on 4, 5, or 7, right? And you got what happened. It wasn't our opinions, like, and this is coming from someone who I have opinions on things, and I do my silly little YouTube streams on my opinion. But when it comes to things that are such large, overarching, hot button items, and tragedies in our country, I feel as though it is only a disservice for these opinions or these making narratives fit before all of the information has been actually determined in an appropriate way. When you come out the gate on either side and you are banging the drum like of a hero or murderer, you're an asshole, in my opinion.
Look, again, and then you can move into how the legal process might play out. Yeah. On the one hand, you have the highest ranking federal officials saying this is a clean shoot, disparaging a woman who was shot in the face as a domestic terrorist. On the other hand, you have a mayor calling it murder, and a governor who is under criticism for other political issues saying, I'm calling up the National Guard, in the face of, the feds are in town and ICE won't leave. I mean, this feels, like the kind of stuff that leads to the end of a republic, that we're headed for just incredible federal versus state, left versus right, full-fledged disagreement sparring into violence and war and whatnot. It's crazy. It's unfortunate, but all that, the reality is there is going to be an investigation by the state, whether the feds want it or not. They are going to, try to make a determination whether a crime occurred. And what lawyers do, try to look at this as dispassionately as possible and talk about, what the issues are legally speaking, which could lead to charges or not, and what the likelihood of success would be or not based upon those issues. And the fact that people interpret that as some form of advocacy is, at least in my view, just indicative of people's political and emotional bias, and you want to hear what you want to hear. And there are unpleasant conversations about analyzing what happened that have to be had, but everybody just is in their corner and doesn't want to hear what it is. I mean, every video that comes out, whoever thinks that this is murder is going to say, see, it proves that it's murder. Anybody who thinks that it was an authorized shooting is just going to say the same thing. It's almost as if it's just going to get worse and worse. But none of them have any credibility. That's the real problem here. The feds have no credibility on this matter because of the stupid and irresponsible statements made by high-level officials, and the state has very little credibility based on these stupid and irresponsible comments made by the people on behalf of the state. It's not good.
Yeah, 100% agreed on that. And is there an argument for, like, where is the civil discourse? Like, where is the what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong? And like when we're looking at things and just analytically versus emotionally. And that is why I appreciate your commentary and your insight, because you are able to keep me from feeling like the emotions of it, which is like our natural reaction of course. And you're going to have, and your heart breaks with a loss of life. Your heart should go out no matter whom you are, what side of an aisle you fall on in America, like in our country. When there is a loss of life, it's just terrible, the whole entire situation. And I am truly, truly sorry for this result and this negative outcome. And at the end of the day, legally speaking, how is the possibilities of this to move forward through our system, Mr. Bederow?
It's just going to piss people off even more and make it worse. So look, the FBI is investigating, okay, officially. I think it's safe to say that there is a 99.999% chance that the FBI's conclusion, as passed on to the U.S. Attorney in Minnesota, as dictated by the Justice Department Central in Washington, D.C., from the president to the attorney general on down, is going to be, there's going to be no federal charges here. Okay. I'm not advocating, I'm not celebrating. I'm telling you, look at the comments of the federal officials. Okay.
Right.
And look at there are difficulties in this case. It's not going to happen federally. The state of Minnesota is almost certainly not going to accept that without doing their own investigation. Okay. So anytime you get state authorities investigating a federal official for allegedly violating state law while they were engaged in official federal duties, you are getting into really dangerous federal versus state issues. And this is where it becomes problematic. Okay. Our system of government, the supremacy clause, just means federal law trumps, no pun intended, state law. That's not meant to be funny. Federal law is supreme. Okay.
Yes.
That's just the way it is. If there is a conflict between federal and state law, federal law will always prevail. That's a general principle of how America works. That's right. Not in dispute. And the only thing the state can do that is they can provide individuals with more protection, individuals, not the government, individuals with more protection than federal law may do. So like a state constitution can give you more rights individually than the federal constitution. They're allowed to do that under the state, but they can't restrict your federal rights. Okay. So now you're going to have a situation where if there is some kind of criminal process where you're going to have a federal agent is going to get hauled into a state court in Minneapolis and charged with murder or something similar. Okay. And the very first thing that's going to happen is if this were to happen, the lawyers are going to cite 28 USC 1442. That is the federal officer removal statute.
I just gotta grab my book. I gotta grab my notebook. You know, I like to write that down. I'm back. I need to jot it down. You know this. Okay. What is it? 14 statute. What is it? 1492? No, what is it?
No, 1492 is when Columbus discovered America.
What's the blue?
28 USC 1442. That is a federal statute, which simply, and I'm paraphrasing because there are certain exceptions, but the bottom line is a federal official can move to have a state prosecution be remanded to federal court. Okay. And a federal court will generally do that if it concludes two things. Number one, that the conduct at issue involved a federal official acting in the course of his official duties. Okay. So for example, if a federal officer was charged with murdering someone off duty, just nothing to do with their job, they're just, have some kind of crazy thing going on personal, they're not going to successfully say, I'm an FBI agent, I get to get tried in federal court because, you accuse me of killing my cousin over a money dispute, nothing to do with my job. Okay. In this case, whatever you think of the ICE agent or not, he was engaged in federal activity in furtherance of his duties. Okay. So that clearly is going to be met. And then the other issue would be, is there a federal defense? Is there a colorable defense? And of course, the defense here that would be asserted is, the supremacy clause and that I was acting in self-defense. Again, many people don't agree with that. I get it. That's going to get you into federal court. Okay. There is a federal district judge in America who's going to find in a case like this that I'm kicking this guy to be tried in state court. Now, in the case I spoke to you earlier about that I was involved in, we tried to move a 4-count murder indictment of a federal FBI agent who was the client, who was charged in New York State Court in Brooklyn. We tried to move it to the Eastern District of New York Federal Court, which is also in Brooklyn, but a federal court. And that was actually denied. But the reason that was denied was the theory of murder in that case, which was ridiculous. And the case got dismissed in the middle of trial for being just beyond ridiculous. But that's neither here nor there. At the time, the Brooklyn DA's theory was that this agent had a top echelon mafia informant, and he was feeding him information about who the rats were, in one of the 5 families, and then he was instructing him to go kill. And the federal district judge, who bless his heart is still on the bench at like age 98 or whatever he is now, said, well, if that were theoretically true, that's not in furtherance of his duties. Like, that's not part of being. And so he said, I'm going to kick this back to state court. Okay. Fine. Okay. That's not going to happen here. This case in Minnesota is not that. Then when the case gets moved to federal court, if there is a case, the defense is going to allege an immunity defense under the supremacy clause, and the law is clear. Okay. If the federal conduct is deemed not criminal under federal law, then the state is out of luck. Like, no matter what the state says, under the supremacy clause, there can be no prosecution because federal law is higher than, I don't want to say trumps, you'll all accuse me of being whatever, you know what I mean. Federal law is superior than state law. Yes. And so that argument will be made, and that may or may not be unsuccessful, that argument. But bottom line is, if there was a prosecution and it gets past an immunity defense under the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution, you would have the state court prosecutors in Minnesota trying this case in a federal district court in Minnesota. This
Oh.
is a very unique set of circumstances, and federal procedural law would apply, although the Minnesota state, law as it relates to the allegations would still apply. It would be a mess, and no one will be happy. Whatever the outcome is, a large segment of the population will be unhappy, and that's just the reality.
And so that would be like a weird hat trick too, like of the state going to federal, but in the state of Minnesota. Like that's a very rare, that doesn't happen, right? Like because it's those
federal law occurs in what they call federal districts. Every state has at least one district. Some states have many more. New York has the Northern District, the Southern District, the Eastern District, the Western District. Minnesota, I don't know. It's probably just the District of Minnesota. But those federal courts are United States courts that literally exist within the state of Minnesota, but it is a federal court. And the theory is that a federal agent may not get a fair shake in state court. So that's why they're afforded, a federal court where a federal judge will be theoretically fairer, understands the federal supremacy issues and whatnot. This is a law that's existed for, hundreds of years. This is not new, but it is something, it's not a common occurrence, but there is just no way that if this agent were to be prosecuted, that it's going to happen in Minnesota state court. It would definitely be in a federal court within the state of Minnesota by a federal presiding with a federal jury pool and all that goes with that.
Okay. And can you read to us or go over with us how what the stand your ground is for Minnesota? Did we know that specifically? Because that law is different in every single state, correct?
Yeah, I mean, they're not that different. Minnesota actually has a specific statute that they wrote into the law that relates specifically to law enforcement use of deadly physical force. And the statute starts with a preamble, literally within the body of the statute, stating the legislative intent. Now, I'm not an expert on Minnesota law, clearly, but it would stand to reason, and if there's any Minnesota lawyers or people, you can correct me. I would bet a substantial sum of money, if I was a betting person, I'm not, that this law came into effect after the George Floyd thing in Minnesota, okay? But the bottom line is, and I actually looked at the Minnesota statute, because that's what lawyers do. We actually look at the law for legal analysis, not Twitter and that kind of thing. The bottom line is the Minnesota statute, which is 609.066, if anybody cares, indicates that, and this is very similar to other states' laws. This is not exactly a radical law or anything like that, but that a police officer is only authorized to use deadly physical force if an objectively reasonable officer, meaning a reasonable person standard, would believe, based upon the totality of the circumstances, meaning everything that's going on, what was being said, the conduct observed, what you perceived, all of that, only if an objectively reasonable officer would have believed that deadly physical force was necessary to stop any number of circumstances. The one which would apply here is having the belief that deadly force was about to be used against him. And it has to be imminent, meaning, it has to be happening. Now, imminence is very interesting because you will see an analysis here shot by shot. There are multiple shots, and you could, in theory, when you are authorized to be use deadly force or to use any kind of self-defense, there are situations where you can initially be justified legally in using force, but there comes a point where you no longer are justified. So, for example, if you break up a fight at a bar or whatever, and somebody's getting the crap kicked out of them, and you jumped in to defend the person, and in order to do that, you have to tackle them and give them a few. If that person stops, that can be a justifiable use of force. But if the threat is over and then you just decide to keep punching and punching, you can have a situation where you were initially legally justified, the threat was terminated, and now you're moving into an affirmative assault.
Oh.
One of the things that have to be analyzed here is what happens if there is a determination by someone in charge that the first shot arguably might have been justified, but then the second and third, or however many there were those too late. Now, again, you're going to get people who are going to say there's no way that those second and third shots were justified. You're going to have people who are going to say that the time difference between shots are like nanoseconds, okay? But these are the issues that are going to have to be broken down as well. But the bottom line is, under Minnesota law, like most states, you can use deadly physical force if you're not the initial aggressor, which is not really the issue here. If you reasonably perceive deadly physical force is being used against you, if you sincerely believe it. So there's kind of a subjective and objective standard. Yet you have to find that this guy believed it, but on top of that, it's a larger burden for the person who would be asserting the defense. You also have to show that even if you sincerely believed it, that a reasonable person in those circumstances, with the facts as the same, under a totality of the circumstances, would also have done that. So if even if you believe, look, he honest to God thought that she was coming at him, if the belief here is that that's not reasonable, well, then it would be criminal. The defense would not be able to avail himself successfully of that defense. These are things that ultimately a jury would have to be charged on. And then the other thing is, and I'm not sure under Minnesota law, because I didn't look it up. I'm not even sure if in Minnesota, if this is an affirmative defense or not. And I don't want to get all too technical for people, but there is a huge difference on whether this is an affirmative defense or what we would call an ordinary defense. Because an affirmative defense means the burden shifts. Means that the defense would have to establish it by a preponderance. If it's an ordinary defense, then the prosecution would have to disprove beyond a reasonable doubt the arguments raised by the defense. So like in New York, for example, justification is an ordinary defense. That's a big advantage for the defense. Prosecution has to disprove it. I don't know whether that's the case in Minnesota or not.
Okay. All right. And that's
a big deal.
That is a big deal, right? Like, because if you have that burden.
Uh-oh. The burden of proof got you. You're frozen up again. Here we go.
Am I here? Mr. Bederow, are you here?
I am. I was going to send you a note saying I'm fetching coffee while you sort it out, but I can wait a few minutes.
No, do you want to go fetch? Go fetch now. That's perfect.
I will, real quick. The burden of proof, whether it's an affirmative defense or not, it's a big deal. Again, all of this is assuming that there was a prosecution, and that if there was a prosecution, that a federal district judge did not dismiss the whole thing based upon, immunity under the supremacy clause. I mean, there's a lot of steps and a lot of layers to this, but it's complicated. I'll be right back.
All right. We'll be here. Lovies, what is happening? What is happening with the Wi-Fi? I don't know, but we're here. Okay. We're going to have a little EDM classic and get your Zabars. I've got a T and a DC because I'm a multiple drinker. Okay. Let's get it. Burr, burr, burr. We're going to find it, babes. Ooh, will she though? We like songs. We're a songstress. Where does that live? Further down, maybe. Nope. Can't find it. Nope. This is what happens when we go on the laptop. It's not the desktop. Okay. Oh, Jesus. Take the wheel. Oh, she doesn't know how to work it. Nope. Further. Guys, I don't know what I'm doing. I have no idea. I can't find it. I was looking for the songs. Mr. Bederow will be back. Don't worry. We are talking. This is a good convo. This is a very unfortunate circumstance. Propaganda, if you will. No, we're not from the Soviet. We're Americans. There he is. Mr. Bederow, what cup of coffee is this for you right now?
Oh boy. Well, I was up early today because I was doing some work in the early morning. I get up very early. I'm one of those people who is much more productive early in the morning and then would rather shut it down in the afternoon. So I don't know, but it's more than a pot, if you can believe that.
Oh, well, that's so interesting because I am the same exact way and always have been. My night owl friends, God bless them. I am not that human. I am kicking ass and taking names between the hours of 6 a.m. and 2 p.m. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, I was even before 6 this morning doing all kinds of stuff, work related. So, but again, I'd rather do that. I'd rather get up early and shut it down early.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. So, all right. So we just went over, which is sick. And thank you for sharing with me about the affirmative defense versus an ordinary defense, where we're burden shifting from an ordinary defense, which would be the disproving beyond a reasonable doubt, correct?
Yeah. In other words, the prosecution would have to establish that a crime occurred and disprove the defense allegation. Otherwise, if there would be an acquittal. If there is an affirmative defense, at least as it relates to that issue, the defense would have to satisfy by a preponderance of the evidence for the jury to conclude not guilty based on that. I mean, the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt never shifts from the prosecution. That would be unconstitutional, violation of due process. But there are certain defenses, which are just called affirmative defenses, that you definitely, it becomes trickier for the defense. There is some degree of a burden. It's a lower burden, but it is an affirmative obligation.
Okay. And now can we, when we're talking about just one other question about this, and then we can, wrap up or whatever you would like to, if there's anything else that we have questions on. But I was wondering, I feel from, not to bring it all the way back to Karen, but in the death of Officer John O'Keefe, the prosecution and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts claimed that Officer John O'Keefe was struck by a vehicle. Now, and that was deadly. It was considered a, unaliving of homicide. by this vehicle that they alleged against Karen Reed, who was found not guilty on all charges except for an OUI back in the summer of 2025. But so with the vehicle itself, right? This isn't just like when you were giving the example, my brain was going for like if you're in a fight, right? And that first you're trying to quash a like a situation where there is a threat and it is got under control, and then you get into a problem territory if you continue to beat somebody up after they have been that threat has been quashed, right? That is different than a vehicle, because a vehicle of SUV of any kind, if that is coming at you, isn't it by like definition, wouldn't that be a deadly weapon? Like, or you could be considered a deadly weapon?
It can, but with justification, there are different principles. So
okay,
you can't be legally justified no matter what if you are the initial aggressor. Okay. So if I point a gun at you and threaten to shoot you, okay, and then you point a gun at me and threaten to shoot me, and then I shoot you, and my defense is, well, she was going to shoot me, so I had to defend myself. That defense would not be allowed to be used because, I started it. By the way, it doesn't just started a meeting about rolling up on someone on the street. It's initial aggressiveness, not just an encounter. Any force that you would even be privileged to use has to be proportional. I mean, again, if somebody is going to punch you with a fist, you can't take out a gun and shoot him in the chest. That would be using deadly force in responding where you were privileged to use ordinary physical force, but not deadly force.
Got it.
Difference is, in order to be under this Minnesota statute and everywhere else in America, assuming you're otherwise privileged to use deadly force, you can only use it if you are reasonably perceiving that deadly force is being used against you. Now, what I'm simply saying, this is not an editorial comment about this case or who's right or who's wrong. A vehicle absolutely, in analyzing using deadly force, can be perceived as a weapon. And if it is coming towards someone, it absolutely, in certain situations, can support a finding of being capable of causing death or serious bodily injury. Now, if there's a car in front of you and the engine is not on, then I would say that's not the case, obviously.
Got it.
But one of the issues in that case is going to be, did that constitute a reasonable perception of deadly physical force under a totality of the circumstances? Ordered to get out of the car, didn't get out of the car. Being told, driving towards him, making some degree of contact. Did all of that and a totality of everything else give him a reasonable belief that if I don't pull the trigger, I'm going to suffer serious bodily injury? If the answer to that is yes, there's no crime here. If the answer to that is no,
there is.
Then he has a serious legal problem on top of all the other problems.
Okay. Now,
it's very specific. And all I tried to say the other day, sometimes, I don't know why I even bother, is that at least understand the law and at least understand legally that this is complicated. I understand people have political emotions and, everyone is tribalized in how they're going to perceive it. And if you disagree, you're crazy and whatnot. And, I find that odd on many levels. Why, a lawyer just saying these are the issues would be subject to attack any more that a lawyer would be attacked for the type of client they represent. That was another thing in these cases that we are familiar with where, we didn't criticize lawyers for clients they represent. This is kind of a similar thing. I don't know what it is. It's just the way politics is today and the emotions are so high. And I go back to saying, I think that all of these politicians just threw a flamethrower on the growing fire and have made it 1,000 times worse. It's just very unfortunate, but it's a legal case. It has to play itself out one way or the other.
And how long would you think that this is going to be? I mean, there's such a spotlight on it now, and it is very divisive, or like, just how you're feeling this, how you're seeing it. And do you think that this will be expedited? Will it be done quickly? You know that the FBI, you said, but that is under a Trump ruled, or the comments that were made by them. So like, do you think, is it going to be a standoff between the state and the feds for a timeline? Yeah.
Look, this is a mess investigatively for a number of reasons. Number one, it's in everyone's interest that this be done expeditiously, but it's more in everyone's interest that this be done transparently, fairly, accurately, and credibly. Now that takes longer, okay? Nobody wants this to take longer, but that would take longer. The other problem is this. The FBI apparently is not cooperating or sharing with the state of Minnesota. And that's just the reality, because they don't trust the state. The state doesn't trust the FBI. But this is bad, okay? When they're not sharing information. And so I hate to say it, it's hard to see how any decision, the way this is currently constituted, is going to be credible because of the rhetoric flying from irresponsible politicians on both sides.
And so what is there for like centrists or for independents like myself, that like, how is there, besides listening, besides keeping an open mind, besides always being able to, have empathy for others and have a feeling of immense sadness for a loss of a human life, for Renee Good's life? I'm horrified for her, for her family, and it shouldn't happen. However, I do want to look at things in the way that, as from an educated place and not from a baseline of just my emotion in it. And like, how do we go forward? Just to listen to you, to watch the facts come out. Like, what's the best idea if you don't want to be roped in to all of the sides with everything, because it's so toxic at this point, in my opinion?
Just keep an open mind and try to remind yourself to be logical, credible, reasonable, and fact-based. And look, it's a criminal investigation. And think back to what everybody said, again, those other cases that we've all talked about, how everyone was so adamant that, people like Karen Reed, others, didn't get a fair investigation. Maybe people should check themselves, some people, and ask themselves, why in that situation were you so offended by a terrible investigation, but in this one, within 2 days, you've reached a conclusion, just like the state police and Norfolk DA did against Karen, and we know that was wrong. The system, in order to work, has to work. And there are cases that are tougher than, and these are the cases that, try men's souls, as they used to say, not just men, women. That's the quote. If you believe in justice, if you believe in due process, if you believe in fundamental fairness, if you believe to the right to a fair proceeding, then it's a lot easy to say it in a case where everyone agrees with you or that you have a strong opinion about. But try to do it in a case where you're predisposed to say, I think this guy's guilty as hell. And that's okay, but still ought to be a fair process, right? It ought to be before we start concluding everything else. And just if you're going to cherry pick and say, I'm in favor of due process and being open-minded when I think it's right to do it, but I'm not going to do that in other cases, then you're not being fair and honest to the American justice system. That's not how it's supposed to go. It's just not how it's supposed to go. And, I understand it's difficult because the reality is this is a hot potato like no other. And it's on video. And let's be honest, video makes it 1,000 times worse. I mean, you see these videos. It's horrifying on so many different levels. Whatever you think of the case, nothing is good about this.
No.
And it doesn't matter whether you think that this guy is a Nazi agent or you think he did nothing legally wrong and was justified. It's just not good. Seeing, I mean, imagine, it's just not good.
Okay. Just one other thing I wanted to ask you, and just from, again, I'm a police officer's daughter, and all of my family, I do respect law enforcement, extremely good law enforcement. And I was just wondering if I've heard a rally cry maybe of why not a taser, or why not shoot a tire, or why not this? Just can you hammer home again, Mr. Bederow, why it's the use of force that is reasonable, but a taser or a tire, if not done appropriately, could end up in the loss of life, like your own like you could be injured by severe bodily harm or death, right? If you do not make the appropriate choice. And I'm not saying that was the appropriate choice, guys. I'm just, please bear with my brain, is that like you can't, that's the exact opposite of bringing like a knife to a gunfight. You're bringing a taser to a deadly weapon, right? In that example, like you would have to go, or not have to, you would be justified in a use of an actual like gunshot versus a taser in that situation?
Statutes, again, all across this country are written in a way that allow somebody subjected to deadly force, assuming it's reasonable, to use deadly force for the simple reason you are allowed to attempt to negate the threat and save you or a third party in those circumstances. As far as police go, if police, this is a general thing. I'm not talking about the facts of this case. If police are told, when they're trained to shoot, assuming they're authorized to shoot, where are they trained to shoot? Center mass, like that's to kill, essentially. Okay, because you don't shoot low, because that may not terminate the threat. If you are authorized to use deadly force, you are authorized to use deadly force. If you are not, you are not. But again, forget this particular case, but if a car is coming at you, you shoot the tires, that may or may not stop the car. Right. That may or not save the person's life who's authorized to use deadly force. That may or may not cause the car to spin out sideways and kill 7 innocent people off to the side. Yes. If a car is coming at you, a taser isn't going to do anything. People can say, well, he shouldn't have been standing here versus there, and that may very well be. But in a legal sense, the only issue is whether it was objectively reasonable for him to believe that I needed to use deadly force to terminate the use of deadly force against me. That does not turn on whether he was standing in front or to the side. I mean, an argument will be made on behalf of this guy that, she's not getting out of the car, okay, whatever, whether you agree with this or not. And, an officer stands in front to like block her from leaving. Now, is that officer supposed to assume that she's going to mow me down? Probably not. Should he have been standing in front of the car? Maybe not. Again, but that's not going to be the sink or swim about whether he reasonably perceived that he was authorized to use deadly physical force.
Noted. Okay. Is there anything else that we didn't kind of go over for where it is right now? Again, just keep an open mind, lovies. I know that this is, and it's, Mr. Bederow and myself, it's like not political with us. He's always fundamentals. Mr. Bederow always gives it to us with his education, training, and experience, and all from law. It's everything that he knows from federal statutes. He's looked up state. He's very, very well and acutely aware of everything that he says, and is just asking, like I am, I wanted to know more. I wanted to get his take on it, and I'm going to keep an open mind, and really watch this unfold. And unfortunately, like you said, it's just going to be muddy. It is going to be unfortunate, I think, on all aspects, Mr. Bederow, just because of the rhetoric and what has been said on both sides, from the state level all the way to the feds, and everybody fanning flames versus doing the correct thing for that agency, for that officer, and most importantly for Renee Good, who did lose her life tragically.
Yeah, I mean, I say keep an open mind legally. I mean, clearly people have strong views about,
of course,
ICE in general, or Trump in general, or, you know, protesting or agitating based on how you interpret it, whatever. But whatever your feelings are about the agent, Renee Good, all of this, for a lawyer talking that we're talking about, it's attempting to push that all to the side and just give a sober review of legally what the issues are. And controversial or not, this is nothing close to an open and shut murder case. It's not. It's very, very complicated, and that's for a number of reasons. That's based on the self-defense law. That's based on the facts, not all of which are possibly known. That is based upon the fact that this is destined, if there is a case, to end up in federal court with a supremacy clause defense. I mean, you could go on and on. It's just not that simple legally. That's all.
Right. Yeah, and it's so interesting to me sometimes when we see, like, I know it's not Twitter law school, is not law school. We know that very much so, but to see very well measured comments made by you, legal takes, and just like how off the rails it goes, I just feel very concerned for our country in the future when I see things like that. When, you know,
I think that's fair, because again, I don't know that any agency at this point who would be charged with investigating this, in light of the statements that have been made and all that, are coming at this from a position of having the public trust and credibility in what they're doing. You know, many people feel the Justice Department has already whitewashed it. And, you know, I understand that. Look at the statements that were made by these high-ranking officials. Many people think that the state of Minnesota is salivating at the prospect of, like, getting ICE. You know, I mean, look at the mayor's quotes: "Get the F out of Minneapolis, and this is murder." How credible is, I mean, this is become just an exercise in how not to handle criminal investigations by the feds or the state. And none of them strike me as having any large degree of public trust in this. So there's no good answer here. The only thing that will ever please the public legally, nothing's ever going to please the public politically. That's just never going to happen. Is if somehow, some way, there is a transparent, efficient, and methodical investigation that lays it all bare, and, you know, it's beyond reproach. I hope that's the case, but I mean, who's doing that?
I don't know. I unfortunately don't know, and that's sad, right? Like, how so sad for our country, and like for these agencies that were so highly respected, and for officers and officials. And you're saying, like, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, this shit was unimaginable, Mr. Bederow. Unimaginable to have comments so just inflammatory, and
it never happened years ago.
Never.
Where I mean, there was the whole thing too. I mean, I wasn't alive either, but I know a little bit about history and criminal whatever. But when Charles Manson, of all people, was being tried in California, President Nixon, of all people, made a statement basically saying, I think he's guilty. And Manson used that as trying to get a mistrial. That, like, look, the president says I'm guilty. It was a shock at the time that any high-ranking politician would weigh in and offer any kind of opinion, whether off the cuff or based on any real knowledge at all. And we're at a level now where you have the president, the vice president, the chief of ICE, the mayor of Minneapolis, the mayor of New York, within 24 hours, all screaming and yelling and pandering to a certain segment of the population, what they believe based on minimal evidence. And it's just insanity.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, just a legal fundamentals, open mind, tragic situation. Our hearts are with, are with the good family and with Minnesota as they're dealing with a lot at this time. And like you said, it was so sad. I remember specifically Minnesota less than 6 years ago, like burning, and it's just, I hope that we can really fundamentally find our way back to some common ground, because I think that all of us do have principles and, foundations as Americans that we do agree with each other on. And it's like you're looking at each other as enemies in ways that I think we have more in common always than we do, than we have differences. And you can find that common ground. You just have to want to look for it. And everybody can't be the devil. You can't make every single person out to be the worst, that there's no redeeming qualities. Everything is gray. It's not black and white. And unfortunately, maybe with social media or with all of us, me included, being an asshole that has an opinion online, like, it's not necessary. And that's why in certain areas it is appropriate, I believe, to try to lower the temperature and just be very factual with things and not try to either pander. I'm not pandering to anybody. I'm just trying to learn. I'm trying to always hear from you, because I know that it's just you're just shooting it straight and you're not going to ever, put any political spin on it. It's illegal, always comes from your legal base.
On this, yeah. I mean, look, there's one agent's conduct who's at issue potentially, who could be prosecuted for killing a woman. And if your response is, well, ICE, that you're not doing this fairly. You have to judge the man and his conduct individually based on facts, evidence, and law. You can't just say, well, he's from ICE and I hate ICE and they're stormtroopers, so he's guilty. The same way, if you come from the other side and you think, if some people think, well, she should have not done what she did, and not that she deserved to die, obviously, but you can't just lob her in as like, part of the protesting culture. You have to look at this. There are individuals. It's just so much more complicated than everybody grouping everyone together as part of, some tribe or clan or group. It's just, it involves individuals, and it's so much more complicated than just saying, I hate ICE or I hate protesters. So, this is what it is. That's not how the justice system and the rule of law should work.
Absolutely. Mr. Bederow, I did want to ask you just one other question, non-related to this, but thank you for your time. Thank you for your legal breakdown.
Left, so we're good. Don't worry.
Good. May I ask you, do we have a date that is on the books for, I know the next hearing for Aiden is going to be on the 23rd, but when is the response from the specially appointed prosecutor, Robert Cosgrove, due?
13th.
The 13th. So that's Tuesday, right? Because my birthday's Monday. Okay. All right. So that is due then. And I won't ask you, because that's ignorant, what your over under is. I'm going to say, I will hope. I will pray for a Tuesday. Okay. And that is all I will say on that. Did you also see any new, did you see anything for AD for DA, which is like my little slogan for Adam Deitch, which is probably not how I say his last name, but that he did like this accountability plan, and it was like specific verbiage, got people a little bit tickled thinking about cases including Birchmore and Officer John O'Keefe's death that may be seen again.
Yeah, I'm familiar with. He launched a plan. I don't remember the exact verbiage. I know he wanted to institute a conviction review unit, which is shocking to me if Norfolk County does not have that unit. I mean, every DA's office in New York has had one of those for at least 15 years. And in many other places, which, you know, that would speak volumes about the current DA's office more than anything. What exactly got people all hot and bothered? What did he say specifically? I mean, I saw generally that he had a plan.
Yeah, hold please. I'll read it to you because why? That's what I do. It was oh no, of course now I'm not going to have it. There was something, oh gosh, that now I'm not gonna be able to find it right this second, Mr. Bederow. I apologize. It was like in a paragraph that that it just had people think that it was going to be. Did anybody else in the chat, Levies, do you remember what he said? No.
I mean, if it's just about, you know, public corruption, and I'm experienced in looking at public corruption in Norfolk County, so vote for me. I mean, that's obviously the biggest selling point for him. I mean, it's no secret that he handled the investigation into the investigation in Karen's case. So, but the tricky part, people should not just assume that if he becomes DA, that all of a sudden half the budget is going to go to reopening the investigation into what happened to John O'Keefe. There are so many layers to that as well. Number one, for what purpose? I mean, is there evidence to support that? Do they have the operating budget to allocate resources if they're just chasing shadows, or is there something to do? And number three, there'd probably have to be an analysis, even if they did reopen that kind of investigation, whether ethically he could be involved in that. You know, that's perhaps not what people want to hear, but that's at least something that I'm sure he and his advisors, assuming he were to win, would have to scratch their heads. I mean, he was privy to a lot of federal materials and the investigation and whatnot. And, you know, now you run for DA to go back to the investigation. That can raise other concerns. So I don't know that I would automatically assume that, you know, anybody is in trouble, so to speak, just because a guy who at least appears to be by far the most qualified person to be DA is going to go after people as it relates to John O'Keefe just because he becomes DA. I don't know that that's likely. I don't know that it isn't, but I think it's more complicated than just, you know, the U.S. attorney who looked into this is now DA, so they're coming. I think people should take a deep breath on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So he said, I'm on his website right now because it's great. Like his Adams accountability agenda for Norfolk County. He wants to hold criminals accountable and keep Norfolk County safe. Yes, we will be accountable to survivors, victims, and their family members. We will hold ourselves accountable to the public. The Real Conviction Integrity Unit, which is what you were discussing previously. Over the course of my career, I've partnered with the Innocence Project to advocate on behalf of folks who were wrongfully convicted of serious violent crimes, including cases where prosecutors and law enforcement rushed to judgment or relied on flawed forensic evidence, and where, as a result, the real perpetrators went free. In Norfolk County, we will build a Real Conviction Integrity Unit that proactively and independently reviews cases where serious questions have been raised. The unit will be based on nationally recognized principles for such units, including independence, flexibility, transparency, and prevention. This unit will affirmatively review cases with known red flags, in addition to fielding requests from members of the public, and members of the unit will be trained by national level experts and ultimately work with DA's office staff throughout the office to implement preventative measures in current and future investigations.
So that's good language, but that's also, that can be very generic too. Not everything has to be viewed through the lens of he's talking about Karen Reed.
Yeah.
Maybe there is a double entendre there, and he is, but those principles should apply anyway in every DA's office. Beyond that, now the first thing that any new DA has to do is just restore the public trust.
Yes.
I mean, the credibility. I mean, the place is in a credibility crisis. We've talked about it before. You know, the embedded detectives in the office. Stuffing money in the DA's pocket through donations. I mean, that kind of stuff has to stop. You know, having a streamlined process of how discovery works and how Brady works, training, you know, regular CLE, office-wide training for prosecutors. I mean, you just can't have situations where, you know, search warrants and murder cases aren't disclosed for years and nobody knows why. They're going to have to trim the fat. I mean, I would imagine nobody's job will be safe. I don't think they all get fired. The trains still have to, you know, operate on time. And it's unfair to accuse everyone in that office of being unqualified or unethical. But I would imagine that a lot of people would go on their own or be forced out if he became DA. But I don't know that that's literally just because of Karen, although clearly that case,
well, he always gets the clippings. Like, that's what kills me, is that he has, like, so if you are on his page, right, it is like, and on his X, it's like Karen Reed, like he takes the headlines and uses that. So I'm like, is he talking to me, or what are we doing here?
He's saying, I was involved in the federal investigation. I have problems with the case. It's a high profile case. And he's campaigning. And let's be honest, when he probably wins, I don't know that he'll win, but I probably, and you know, you do the autopsy on what happened to Morrissey in this campaign and his legacy. Obviously, Karen will be, you know, number one on what destroyed Morrissey. I mean, there's other things that are problematic, but that case is going to be number one of that. And, you know, clearly, I mean, I also saw, you know, he's generated a lot of money. Okay. And a lot of that money has come from people he worked with in the U.S. Attorney's Office. A lot of it has come from Karen and supporters. That's how it works in campaigning. But that also can raise potential conflict issues if he wins about reopening. There will be pushback about, you know, are there deals? Are there this? It's just tricky, but you know.
See, I saw that more of a FU, not an FU. I saw that more as a rebut to Morrissey, and seeing that he was the way forward for transparency, for you know, for actual change in Norfolk County, so that things didn't happen to Karen or any other woman, you know, in that county and under the umbrella of Michael Morrissey and what he has done and lacked thereof, and what he has failed to do for the men and women of Norfolk County. Like, I thought that the donation, or, you know, what was disclosed as a donation, that makes sense of, like, yeah, that's an FU to Morrissey versus a, you know, shining endorsement or a conflict with Deitch. But that could be seen as both ways.
Look, again, I don't know, but I think it's a reasonable interpretation that when somebody donates money to a candidate, that on some base level, that is some form of endorsement. Like, I'm giving you money because I want you to be DA. That's not a criticism, but I think if you donate to a candidate, unless you're one of these people who's like, I'm going to feed this one and feed this one because I'm hedging, because I want access that way, which you can see. There are people who do that, who donate to multiple people because whatever. But the bottom line is, donations are public. People see them.
Yes.
And if you take actions on behalf of people who donated money, there will be criticism. It doesn't mean that it's corrupt, but there will be questions about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And just Kelly, who I love, Kelly is one of my girls, but she said, get MSP out of the DA's office. And I'm going to say this, this is one of the biggest mother humping things that will always just make me enraged, Mr. Bederow. It is those embedded troopers, Troop E, Troop D, whatever, wherever you belong, and that you didn't rotate these guys out. And it was they were so ancestral, not really, but you know what I'm saying, of that office, that band of brothers, that I always believed, I think change moving forward could have been, you could do a year, even 6 months at a time. I don't give a shit. Go to another. If you need to have embedded troopers, if they have to do it, it cannot be a position for life, in my opinion. It has to be rotated. You guys have to change it up. It shouldn't be that the same guys that were there are starting there, and then they are retiring there, and then they're getting their $228,000 in pensions. And what have we done along the way? I don't know DeChico. I don't know Tully. I don't know Buchanan, like Proctor. All of you, it just hasn't made sense, and it doesn't make sense specifically when you see Morrissey recuse himself, but not those troopers, not those Mass State Police troopers that were embedded in his office to do an investigation into Turtle Boy, Aiden Carney. And then you see the conflict has just been imminent and felt since day one. You saw it. You pretended you were going to you did recuse yourself, but then you allowed these men who have followed your lead and been with you since, Christ was a cowboy. All of those boys were still able to do an investigation that therefore, on principle, was not unbiased.
Yeah, there's nothing for me to say in response to that. You said it all. The conflicts are everywhere. These people are too friendly. It's hard to judge your friends when you're dealing in a professional environment like this. They donate money, which is that's just an unforced error. That should not happen in a public agency, especially one involving an elected official and his go-to state troopers that he defends vigorously. I'm not talking about one investigation. I'm not going to talk about that specifically, but there are just so many conflicts, and there's such a breeding ground for corruption, and it's they need changes there. And I don't know if Morrissey's running or not. I imagine that Deitch will win, but I only say that because he's out there, he's raised a lot of money, he's very vocal, and he's a former prosecutor, and he has a lot of involvement in this county for not so good things. So I'm not a political analyst, but I just imagine I would be stunned if there wasn't a lot of change coming soon to that county.
Totally agreed. And on that note, I appreciate you, Mr. Bederow. We've made it to 2 hours, even with 2 blackouts. But one final question per Causy's thesaurus. And why can't I pull it up? Kimberly. Oh, Causy, I'm sorry, babe. Oh, no, I can do it. I'm going to go back. Look I'm on listen, don't ever let me go on I'm on the laptop this morning. Packers or Bears, she asked.
I think the Bears, but I don't want to say that because I don't want to listen to Bob Mata like he's out of control with his Bear stuff, but we love him. And for his sake, I hope the Bears win. The Patriots better win too if the Bears win, because we're never going to hear the end of it from him. But I think the Bears will win.
Okay. Bears. And to all the Bears and the Packers and the Pats alike, we bid you adieu. Thank you for a Saturday sermon instead of a Sunday service. Always a pleasure, Mr. Bederow. I hope that you have a great rest of your day and a good Sunday. And I hope I get to talk to you next week.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. All right, lovies. We did it. Duh. Okay. Who is he? Everything. I hope that was like digestible for you. It's a lot. I feel like it was a lot of information to take on for me too. And I just love you guys. I hope that you have a great rest of your Saturday. Be good to yourselves, be good to each other. And am I going to be on tomorrow? Yeah. At 8 o'clock? Hell no. But I'm going to get here because I love your faces. Okay. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
All right, great job on the news.
Thank you.
We will, Courtney and I will share what happened when we went to dinner last night, Sunday dinner coming up. And as I